Let's switch gears right now and let's go to our Abuja studio where Malam Garba Shehu is standing by. Thank you so much, Mr. Shehu, for your time on the program today. Let's begin the conversation quickly tonight with the benefits and what the president brought from China as benefits. The question is, what are the gains, the major gains of that China trip to Nigerians?
This can be seen from three perspectives. One, from the point of view of the continent. Nigeria is a member, is a leading nation on the continent, and this is a friendship between China and the entire continent of Africa. The countries came together, sat down and agreed to synergize, to consult regularly, to coordinate and to plan together in terms of international politics, in terms of infrastructure and priorities and strategies of their own development. Now, as a government, President Muhammadu Buhari went there, with a fairly long list of some of the issues that are of importance, infrastructure, financing, which China had been very helpful to Nigeria, in executing. We had support from the Chinese authorities. Now we are going to have Mambila Power, plant taking off, hopefully early next year, and that's really a major achievement that we had scored. We have assurances. NNPC has signed agreement with the National Oil Company of China. They are going to secure funding for Ajaokuta, Abuja, Kaduna, Kano, gas pipeline. This is the biggest, it's going to cost about $2.8 billion US, to put together. And we are hoping that before the end of this year, again, work will begin on that process. There is also, from China, also a plan to set up an industrial park that will bring a lot of benefits, more than 10,000 jobs that would see, Nigeria gaining full benefits from the cotton value chain, from growing the cotton somewhere in Katsina State to ginning and spinning, yarning and textile manufacture and garmenting. These things are intended for Kano, Katsina, Abia State and Lagos State. This is going to bring an investment worth over $2 billion United States dollar. So these three that I just mentioned to you now, you can see that they add up to more between 7 to 8 billion US dollars. We had agreements signed between government and private sector in China. We had agreements signed between private sector from Nigeria and private sector from China. And on top of all of that, the wife of the president, Mrs. Buhari, was there. And together with the Chinese authorities, they have now launched a big program that will support the war against HIV/AIDS on the continent.
All right.
These are some of the elements that we're talking about.
Okay, let's take a quick break, Madam Shehu, and when we come back, we'll dig deeper into some other issues that concerns Nigeria, about the Chinese-Nigeria relationship, and of course, some other issues relating with the elections and the president. That's in a moment, everyone. Join us again. Thank you, everyone, for staying with us. Malam Garba Shehu is the spokesperson to President Muhammadu Buhari, and he's been talking to us from our Abuja studio on the benefits or gains of the president's trip to China. Thank you so much, Malam Shehu. Let me quickly ask you, these are very important. There are fears about what some described as a possible debt trap diplomacy with China. In 2016, $6 billion US from China, 4.5 billion in 2017, and we're getting about much more this time around. The fear of Nigeria is the rising debt profile and how much we are now owing China.
Well, two things. One is to say that the Chinese themselves are aware that they face international criticism on some of these things. And from the beginning of this summit, the Chinese President Xi Jinping made it clear that in line with the AU principle of non-interference in the internal affairs of member countries, China would not interfere in the internal affairs of African countries. So they will not meddle. Now, on the issue of debt, we are borrowing, quite unlike what you had in the past, to do long-delayed infrastructure. This administration is focused on a number of infrastructure projects, the type of which are basic. They are necessary for us to start, to generate growth and national development. This country needs power, we need the roads, we need railway, a lot of investment in terms of communication. Are we over borrowing? No. From what the experts are saying, in fact, shortly before I came in here, I Googled the question. And the thing is, what is the ratio of Nigeria's debt to GDP? And the answer is about 16%. Some said 20%. That is not threatening. It cannot be threatening. It cannot be a burden. Considering that a lot of countries, including some on the continent, others, in Japan, for instance, some of them are up to 100% of their GDP, and that's where it becomes a problem.
So, Madam Shehu, I mean,
the government of Nigeria.
Sorry, for some analysts, the question would be the trajectory of how the debts have been rising since about 3 years since this government got into power. That's been the issue, major concern for Nigerians. That perhaps we're borrowing more than we can pay, and perhaps in the nearest future we will have borrowed ourselves too much into trouble.
Well, don't forget that some of the projects actually are designed in a way that they will pay back. The rate of interest so low and the period of repayment so long, 20 years or more in some cases. So therefore, this is not the kind of debt that is coming to choke us up so immediately. That, I think, should be very clear to people who criticize this administration.
Let me move away slightly from that issue, still on the issues relating to governance. You released a statement about the Chief of Staff to the President, Mr. Abba Kyari. Can you tell us whether or not there is an investigation that has commenced on that matter?
Well, reading the press, I think that someone from EFCC did say there is an investigation. From our own point of view, we think that the presidency is coming under attack for the simple fact that we're approaching an election. And this is a government that has maintained a corruption-free, image all through. We have not suffered any major financial scandal. And so the opposition is desperate to stick something on the administration. And so that's the way we are looking at it. The thing then is, Malam Abba Kyari, the Chief of Staff to the President, has decided to brief his lawyers and to sue the newspaper, which put this story up on their front page, because he felt that enough opportunity had been given them to weigh the facts and investigate and come to the same conclusion that virtually everyone has, which is that this story is just a fiction. But they decided to make copy sales from someone's reputation, and usually there should be a price to pay for doing that. That's our understanding.
Are you worried? Because this is not the first time we are hearing allegations to the IS office in the land around people within the kitchen cabinet of the president, whether true or not. Allegations have been raised. In fact, there are allegations also about 500 million naira bribe for a telecommunications company. There are a series of allegations. In fact, they sacked SGF of the Federation, the report relating to his sack. These are huge issues that are brought to the table. Is the president worried about some of these issues and the happenings around it?
when the facts are proven, the president should be worried. And in the case of the SGF, former SGF that you mentioned, he had acted. Well, please, the thing to try to put to your viewers here is for them to have an understanding of the fact that this is an administration that has stopped so much wrongdoing. In this country, there is a huge number of citizens who have fed fat on the system without doing just anything to justify their drawing enormous benefits from the nation's treasury. The president has stopped all of that. And the thing that is happening is that, people who are being deprived, who have this sense of entitlement, that the treasury is their birthright from which they must draw. They're just looking for people to hunt and to shoot down. People in the presidency are targets of this smear simply on account of the fact that they stand between the president and some greedy leaders in our society who would like to have presidents of Nigeria signing off on oil well. You just take oil well and go and draw billions of US dollars for doing nothing.
All right.
Simply because the president loves their face.
Yeah, Madam Shehu, before I allow you to go tonight, the president nomination form for 2019 had been gotten for him for the cost of about 45 million naira. Are you weary that that may be a contravention of our electoral act regarding the kind of money that can be thrown at a candidate or someone who is running for office, especially the highest office in the land?
Well, there is an interesting debate going on out there. The sponsors of this procurement are saying no law is breached. People in the opposition, including some do-gooders, have written opinions to say President don't accept. One thing I can assure you is that the president will always be guided in doing the right thing, at all times. And so therefore, people will look at these things as it is now. This form has not even been presented to the president. When the time comes, he probably will be asking questions about legality and rightfulness, righteousness of, this action. If there is any doubt and there is any threat to the process, nobody would like to win an election and then they end up in court. So the right thing will be done in this circumstance.
Madam Garba, Shehu, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, thank you so much for coming on the program this evening.
Thank you, I appreciate it.